So the next speaker will be Abdallah Saffidine. He is all the way from Sydney, I suppose. He's probably glad to be back in Europe. Well, we all know that Go is a game, the game of life maybe for us. It's a complex game. It has certainly a very complicated complexity. It even has several complexities. And we will be hearing from you. And please, Abdallah, go ahead.
Thank you for the introduction. I am very happy indeed to be here in Europe. I had another conference in Europe mid-April. That was also a games conference, and I thought I could stay all the way until Advances in Computer Games, because it's such a nice time with all of you and with the Computer Olympiads, and always very interesting talks to hear today. So today I'm going to tell you about a paper that I wrote with Olivier Teytaud as well as with Shi-Jim, and it started as a survey on the complexity of Go. Actually, it was a survey on Go, and then we split it into two parts. One part is on the complexity. And why would we study the computational complexity of Go? Well, lots of people study computational complexity in general, and Go is important for us as game programmers, so that complexity is important too. Knowing the formal complexity of a problem may allow you to rule out naive algorithm. You know that if your problem is NP hard, then there's no way around brute force search, basically. And Minimax, MCTS, they're all brute force search algorithm in a sense. So that allows us to confirm that we're on the right track and that there's no small trick that would solve it all. Another reason is to see how the game of Go compares to other games, other board games, other strategic games, other graph problems. Not just the game of Go, but also aspects of the game of Go. And indeed, there are many results on the game of Go, and I will discuss them here. And we have added a few results of our own. So I'm assuming all of you know the game of Go, and I'm also assuming that most of you are quite familiar with the rules, but just to highlight the main elements of the game, you can have captures. So you form groups, and groups have liberties, which are empty intersections around them. So this white group has only one empty intersection around it, and if the black player plays a pawn here, the white group disappears. This is a capture. Once a group has only one liberty remaining, it's said to be an Atari. In some setting, you manage to enclose a liberty fully within your group, and this is called an eye. And the opponent cannot play into your eye unless, by doing so, they would be removing your single liberty. So if you have two eyes, then it's impossible to play in both at the same time, so you can be sure that your group cannot die. Finally, there's the problem of Co. So imagine the situation like this. So it's black's turn. Black can see that this white pawn has a single liberty and play a capturing move right there. But then white could do the same. Say, oh, this black pawn has only a single liberty, so I can play here too. And then it goes on. So this is not allowed by the rules of Go. The rules of Go say that you can't just come back to the same position after a move. So this is called the simple Co. There's another rule called the super Co, which says you can't come back to a position you've reached any time in the past. So Co is immediate past, it's forbidden, and super Co is any time in the past, and this is not forbidden in all the variants of the game of Go. Depending on if you play with Japanese rules, with Chinese rules, with New Zealand rules, you have slight variations around the super code. I'm not going to get into those details, but it will have an impact on the complexity. So, let me tell you about first Atari Go, which is a variant of Go used when we teach the game of Go to a beginner. We use that as the first game. So we start with an almost empty board with this pattern, And here we say that the winner is the first player to be able to capture an opponent's group. And then we don't have to score points, we don't have to think about code, and it makes it simpler for the beginner to understand the rules of the game. So how could such a game play out? Well, black can threaten this white pawn, which defends by extending its liberties, then black goes on, white protects, then black makes a final mistake, trying to be over greedy, and thus allowing white to threaten this turn at the same time as this turn, and so both cannot be protected at the same time, and this would be a white win at a go. So this is one first variation of Go, and it really is around the capture mechanics of the game. Another important aspect is the ladders. So ladders, a ladder in Go is a sequence of threats that have to be answered. And so one player is going to make a forcing move and the other one is going to escape until the ladder is resolved in favor of one of the two players. So this principle appears also in the other games. In the Hex, in Twist, it's also known as ladder. In Shogi, it's not known as a ladder, it's known as Tsume Shogi, but it's really the same concept. And this is a difficult thing for computers to realize when it's just based around a simple MCTS or multi-color research. So imagine the two situations like this. It's black's turn to play. This group has two liberties, and if black plays here, it will force white to defend by extending on top. Then black can force and take one more liberties, one more, up until the stone that was on the diagonal comes into play. If it was a black stone, then black captures. If it was a white stone, then it allows white to escape. And so when you have this initial position, we have to look far away from the local area, like here, for black to decide if going on this ladder will be successful or if it's not a good idea. This is usually easy for humans to spot. They just look at the diagonal and see if there's a black or a white stone. But it's hard for computers. Actually, it's also hard for humans when you get into complicated ladders. The simple ones that occur in practice most of the time are fairly easy, but they can get difficult. So let's see another Go variant. So this one is called Kill-All Go. In Kill-All Go, the white player starts with many stones on the board, and the black player is trying to create a group that has two eyes. And white is trying to prevent that. So there's no concept of points here. Black just tries to make a group and survive, and white tries to control the whole board. Finally, Phantom Go. So Phantom Go is an imperfect information game, so it's slightly different from the previous ones. It's kind of similar to Kriegspiel, which is Phantom Chess, and it is being played at the Computer Olympics. I think it will be played this year. No, not this year, but it was played in the previous years. So, how do you go about Phantom Go? You have a referee and two players, and the players are not going to interact one with another, they're going to interact with the referee. So, let's take the point of view of the black player. Black player says, I would like to play in d4. And the referee says, okay, you can do that. So black puts a black pawn here. And then the white player plays, and the black player doesn't know what white has done. Then black says, oh, I would like to play on e4. And the referee says, yeah, you may do so. So then black has a pawn there. On the real board, there's already a white stone somewhere, but black doesn't know where it is. Then, say next move, black suggests, oh, I'd like to play on d5. And then the referee says, but you can't do that, that's illegal. When the black player gets such information, the black player can deduce that there is a white stone there. So that's gaining information. And then the game goes on. I suggest to play on E5. Yes, you can. C5, no, it's illegal, and so on and so forth. So that's the game of Phantom Go, and it's played with the same rules as Go, with code captures, but you don't see the concrete moves of the opponent. So these are all the variants that I'm going to discuss the complexity of today. We have Atari Go, ladders, Kilo Go, Phantom Go, and of course classical Go. So computational complexity, a very, very short primer. It's an important problem. People care about it. You have two classes of problems. The class of polynomial problem and the class of problems that are polynomially solvable by a non-deterministic Turing machine. And the question is whether there is any problem that can be solved in polynomial time by a non-deterministic machine that cannot be solved by a polynomial deterministic machine. And we don't know. People suspect that NP is strictly bigger than P, that there are problems here and not there, but they haven't been able to prove it. Actually, there are more classes than just these two. That's what people in graph theory and in set solving focus on. But in games, we tend to favor all the classes because they capture the sense of our problems more faithfully. We also have the P-space class, the X-prime class, X-space, and even more classes. And they all follow such a hierarchy, and we don't know if any of this inclusion is strict. There are things that we know. We know, for instance, that P is strictly contained in X time. We know that P-space is strictly contained in X space. But where does the strictness come from? Is it here, 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 all over? We don't know yet. Games have been classified on that hierarchy. For instance, the game of Hex is well known to be a P-space complete problem. The game of Amazons is also P-space complete. If we focus on one aspect of Amazons, the Amazon endgames that Richard was discussing before, the one where you want to evaluate it statically because it's much easier. Indeed, from a complexity theoretic point of view, it is much easier. It is in NP rather than in P-space P. Amazon endgames where the plays are not interacted is an NP complete problem. Then we have problems that are harder, like chess and shogi, which are known to be X-time complete. So where does Go lie? Well, one very early paper, 1980, has shown that the game of Go played with Japanese rules was P-space hard. Actually, this also holds for Go with Chinese rules. That was, I'm saying that it's an early paper because the complexity class P-space was defined just 2 years before, maybe 1 year before. So it was among the first problems to be shown to be P-space hard. Then Robson has shown with a very involved proof that it was even harder. It was X-time hard, and it's actually X-time complete once you use the Japanese rules. This result, we do not know if it holds or not for Go with Chinese rules. We don't know. Sumigo are NP hard. The ladders, they're P-space complete. The endgames are P-space hard. So there are a few results for Go. For the variants, well, except ladders, we don't know. So how do most of the P-space hardness proofs in game complexity go? Well, they use the game generalized with the geography. In computational complexity, you have a problem that you know to be hard, and you have another problem that you want to show to be hard, and you show that it's harder than the one that you know to be hard. Once you have shown that it's harder than this one, then you know that it's formally hard. So the one used as a base is most often generalized geography. It's been used for Hex, for Havana, for Bridge, for silent switching games, and it has been used in Go several times. What are the rules of this generalized geography game? The rules are very simple. We have a graph, like this one, and a token on some vertex. And say it's White's turn to play. So White is going to move the token along one of the edges, and then it will be Black's turn, and so on and so forth. The restriction is that you cannot come back on a vertex that has been visited before. So we might just as well remove it. So this could play out like this. White goes to the right, then it's black's turn. Black has only a single choice to go to the top, then it's white's turn, and now it's black's turn, the token is on the top, and black has the only move, so white has one. Those are the rules of generalized geography. You see it's fairly simple, and it's been used to prove the hardness of many games. So why has it been used so often? Well, it's a game, so that's a good start. We already have the concept of two players taking turns, choosing moves. And when you simplify the graph, you make assumptions on the graph, the generalized geography problem remains difficult. So if we assume that the graph is bipartite, if we assume that the graph is planar, if we assume that it has bounded degree 3, the problem remains hard. And when we take all those assumptions together, what kind of graph do we get? We get a graph that has 6 types of important nodes. We have nodes, because it's bipartite, you can split the nodes into two groups, white groups and black groups. Because degree is at most 3, then you get 1 entry, 1 out, 1 in, 2 outs, 2 outs, 1 in. You actually also get 3 in, 0 out, and 0 in, 3 outs, but those can be removed in the preprocessing step. So you get 6 different types of nodes, and you have a planar graph. We care about planarity in games because most of our boards are planar. The games for which you play on a non-planar board are very, very rare. In Go, the board is planar. Chess, the board is planar. And the fact that you were working with a planar graph will make it easier to represent a generalized geography problem as a Go problem or as a hex problem. Is everything clear so far? Yeah?
Actually, real quick question. So are you saying if all 3 assumptions are satisfied, still nothing complete?
Yeah, it's still p-space complete.
Oh, p-space. Okay,
Yeah.
Oh.
So, yeah, you can add this, it remains. Then you add that, it remains, and yeah, that was proved in the 80s for, I think that for the hex paper by Stefan Reich, he proved that this restriction was still hard, and then used it to show. So once we realized that we only have 6 types of vertices, how do we reduce the generalized geography problem to a game? We say, okay, I have my, we'll do it with Atari Go. I have my Atari Go board, and I have a generalized geography graph that has this structure. So to represent it, I need some way of representing the concept of edges, and 6 gadgets that will represent each of the vertices. Because the game is symmetrical, I actually need only 3 gadgets. One for this, and that, and then I will get the symmetrical variation for the other color. And for Atari Go, we get something like that. So we can represent the 3 main types of vertices, of white vertices in this fashion. So this represents a 1-1 vertex, and this is 1-2, this is a 2-1. So what do this all mean? In our representation of generalized geography on an Atari board, we're going to say we have groups of active stones. So this is 1, and this is another. Here we have 1, 2, 3, and then we have the surrounding that's not going to be active in itself. And so except for the surrounding, all the active groups, they have a limited number of liberties. They may have 1 liberty, 2 liberties, 3 liberties. And one of the groups will be under a threat. Here, say this one. And if white wants to win at Atari Go, they cannot let black play a stone here and then close here. So white is forced to play here. And by playing a white stone here, white is threatening this group. and the game goes on further. So here, for instance, imagine that this white group is active and is under threat. White needs to protect it, and white is going to decide to protect it from going to the bottom or to the right. Say that white places a stone here, then black has to protect this small stone by playing the black stone there, which threatens this small group, so white has to play here, and the game goes on the right direction. If white had started here, the game would have gone on around the bottom, and so white can choose how protecting this group and making sure that this group lives is going to affect the game. Are we going to threaten this group or this group? And this corresponds to choosing which edge to follow in the generalized geography problem. So that shows that Atari Go is a piece-space hard problem. For Kilo Go, we can prove that it is any upper bound that we have on classical Go can be adapted to Kilo Go by saying, oh, it's just a game of Go with a huge komi for black in favor of white. So now, in favor of black, sorry. So if black wants to win, because they have such a huge komi, they just need to make one lift group. And if they manage to do so, they have won the game. For the lower bounds, it's slightly harder. We have to go back to the actual proofs and then adapt them. So the actual proof of piece-space hardness for classical Go had something like this with ladders all over the place. How do we adapt it? Well, we make sure that black cannot create a live group anywhere else, so we add bounds, white bounds. And now black cannot make live groups here, and the only way for black to make a live group is to win the ladder. So that uses the same gadgets to prove that Kilo Go is also hard. As for Phantom Go, the exact problem we're looking at is looking for a sure win. And for the lower bound, we can adapt the previous reductions by saying, we take Robson's 1983 proof, which involved ladders and co. When you have a co, you have a capture. And when you have a capture, the referee tells you which pounds disappear. So you get information that way. Also, when you play out the ladders, there is a way in Phantom Go to play probing move that you're going to win the ladder if they're legal. You're going to get information, and the referee telling you that it's illegal if it's not legal. And that way, with those captures and those probing moves, you get all the information you need. That way, we can show that the problem is as hard as in the perfect information variant. However, it might be harder because of the imperfect information. So an upper bound is given by the depth branching factor. Will consider all the possible ways that the game can go on, then all the possible strategies, and we have a tower of exponentials, 3 exponentials actually, and if we do a brute force on that tower of 3 exponential, we get something, an algorithm that solves the game exactly, but that's a tower of 3 exponential, so it's rather expensive, and we obtain a 3x result, so we have a gap here. So, as a summary, for Go with the Chinese rules, the problem of Atari Go is piece-space hard and it belongs to piece-space. So there is no gap here, it's a piece-space complete problem. For classical Go, it's at least as hard as Atari Go, so it's piece-space hard, but you don't have a better upper bound than piece-space, so there's a huge gap there left to fill. Phantom Go, an even big gap. Kilo Go, we haven't proven it formally, but we have the proof, so it's probably the same as classic. As for Japanese rules, the main difference, Atari Go doesn't make a difference because the rules of Ko are not involved. For classic, we knew that it was X time hard, which is a better result than this. For Phantom, it can propagate. However, we cannot use this trick when we look at Phantom Go under Japanese rules, because we do not have the super Ko rule. In Chinese rules, you have super Ko that says you can't come back to the same position, it's forbidden. In Japanese rules, you don't have that. So we cannot bound the depth of the game. We may come back to the same position again and again. There's no way to know. So we don't have the fact that it's decidable. As for pure Go, it's the same as classical Go. So to conclude, we have shown that Atari was a piecewise complete problem. That's a new result. We have also shown that the lower bounds were preserved for Phantom Go, that the upper bounds are preserved for Pure Go, and we have highlighted the gaps that remains to be filled in the complexity of variants of Go. Mainly, the one that was open before, people knew about it, we haven't solved it. It's classical Go with Chinese rules. Is it X T-space complete? Is it X time complete? Is it X space complete? We don't know. And for Phantom variants, we have tightened the gap, but it still remains. Thank you very much.
Please. Richard.
2 quick questions, maybe quick. So did I understand correctly then the main difference between the complexity results between Japanese and Chinese is because of the supercode rule?
Yes.
That is the real reason.
Yeah, so in the proof that this is X time hard uses codes a lot. And we can't adapt it directly to Chinese because we cannot come back to the same position.
I see. Oh. And I just had a minor technical question on your 1 and 2 out gadget. It wasn't obvious why white had to play in there at all.
Okay, so imagine that this group is under a threat. So there was a black stone somewhere there in the previous sketch. So this white group has only 2 liberties. If white plays somewhere else, then black might play here. So this group now is under a carry and has a single liberty, plays here, and now black plays there, and the group is stuck.
I see.
And the same thing plays out in the other direction. So in those gadgets, all the time, the main group has the active group has 2 liberties, and if you don't extend, then you can be shut down. And even though you would have 1 liberty remaining, you can't extend in that direction.
Yeah,
You'll be stuck.
I see.
We need to have 2 liberties for each group, because here there needs to be a choice. And that's why we get this ugly thing here.
Maybe final question? Yes?
How about the situational superpole? The same? Positional superpole?
Repeat the question for the
Yeah. So the question is whether the difficulty with Chinese rules comes from the positional supercode or situational supercode. The difference between those 2 things is that in one of the 2, it's the same position of the stones on the board, and in the other one, it's the same position and the same players to play. And I don't remember which one is which, but I think situational is stones plus the player, and situational position is just the stones. That's correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the main difficulty comes from situational, but if we forbid situational, then we're also forbidding. No, we're not forbidding positional, but let me think. I think maybe there's no problem if we allow positional and we forbid. So maybe if we forbid. No. What I'm saying, if we forbid situational and we forbid positional, I think it's the same as if we forbid situational only. But I'm not 100% sure, and we need to look at it positive. I'm not sure.
Also, New Zealand rule, which allows the suicide. How?
So,
Repeat again.
yeah. In the New Zealand variant of Go, suicide is handled differently. So suicide is when you kill your own group by depriving it from liberties, and I believe that it does not affect the proofs for oddness. So if superco is handled the same as in Japanese rules, then the complexity for New Zealand rules would be the same, because suicide does not come into play in the proofs.
So the tenfold will not be will not affect the result, right?
Sorry?
Tenfold, a rule, a Japanese rule.
Yeah, I don't think it. No, I don't think it affects it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will be back at what time do you suggest?
20 minutes from now for the
20 minutes from now?
coffee.
Okay, take a drink. 20 minutes from now.
Okay. Thank you.